Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NBA Edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, starting with Taylor Smith. We're going to break down the DraftKings main slate for Wednesday, January 8th. The goal is to help you win. We're going to highlight our favorite plays. We go position by position. To do that, we look at ownership, projections, overall player projections, matchups, everything that actually matters. And we try to point you to the better plays as you look to build your lineups. Obviously, we do suggest you use some kind of lineup optimizer or tool to do some of the hard work for you. And we don't just hand out straight up picks. We do hand out core plays in our Discord, and we do try to push you to the top plays that we like. But ultimately, you do have to make some of those decisions on your own. If any of this stuff helps you out, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, come hang out with us in Discord. And if you're feeling extra grateful, you can give us a super thanks below the video. Throw us a couple shekels for the free content. All right, let's get into it. Let's start at point guard, SGA. Not so surprisingly, starts off with the best projection at the position with 56 fantasy points. Not going to be owned, though, because Tyrese Maxey also projects like a god and is way cheaper. And he's coming in with monster ownership. And there's also Cade Cunningham at 9.8K. So let's start with those three guys, Taylor. Obviously, Maxey and SGA project better than Cade, but Cade is awesome. And the fact that Cade's kind of going overlooked is kind of interesting. I think Maxey is just like a home run smash call here against the Wizards with no Joel Embiid or PG-13. I don't really care about the ownership. That's where I'm starting my build today.
Yep. No issue with that at all. Like, he's 8-9. He should be more expensive. No Embiid, no PG. The matchup is the best you can get. Washington on a back-to-back. Philly's pretty bad, so I'm not like super concerned that they're going to run away with this game and Maxey's going to frost you necessarily if he doesn't get a full allotment of minutes. So yeah, really nothing bad to say about him. I guess the only thing would be the position's pretty loaded. Like, there are a lot of high-end point guards that look pretty good. You mentioned Cade, you mentioned Shea. The Cleveland guys are okay. Brunson, if Towns is out, your boy Jalen Brunson, who came through for you the other night in a big way.
Oh, he's totally screwed me, and you know it.
We have Jokic questionable, presumably, maybe doubtful. Didn't play last night. So the Nuggets point guards, Russ went crazy last night. Murray, not so much, but matchup is not way better, but the matchup's a little bit better tonight against the Clippers. The Pelicans look awesome to me. DeJounte, if he's in, and CJ without Zion, without Ingram, without Trey Murphy. They're playing Portland, so good matchup for them. I really like all these high point guards. Halliburton, if he's in, it's a great matchup as well against the Bulls. So really a ton of ways to go at point guard, and we haven't even gotten to some of the others that we like.
Yeah, you're not wrong at all. So, I mean, like, technically, you really could approach the slate the opposite of what I'm doing. You could just say, like, okay, well, Maxey's mega chalk. I'm just going to do something else because there's so many other ways to go and hope that he is just okay. And then these other guys that lower ownership, crush. Thing is, though, I'm not doing that because, number one, he's discounted for the situation he's in. The Wizards are like the best possible matchup on the board. His projection is amazing. Like, everything, every box you could tick is being checked off here to the point where, like, okay, first of all, I experienced Brunson and Jamal Murray now of where they were in great spots and they completely flatlined. That does not mean, in the name of recency bias, right? That does not mean that Jamal Murray is not a good play if Jokic is out tonight. At his price, he's a great play if Jokic is out. Although Clippers matchup, not super ideal. And the same thing with Brunson. If Cat's out against the Raptors, of course he looks amazing. Thing is, you cannot play everybody. So kind of what I was doing yesterday, what we were talking about, Trey and LaMelo, that ended up being a total wash, right? LaMelo crushed and Trey crushed. But it's the same approach. Why go somewhere else when a guy at a very similar price in Maxey is in like as good of a spot as you could ask for? So that's not where I'm going to get different as far as ownership goes. It's just like he just looks like, the best play probably of the entire slate. And then after that, we need to do a little bit of work to get different and figure out who else we want. Now, if Jokic is out, Jamal is out of the equation for me. If Jokic is in, he's out of the equation. If Jokic is out, obviously Jamal Murray's projection is going to spike. He's going to look pretty good. I will say, though, he hasn't always smashed in these situations. Russell Westbrook kind of takes over a little bit for Denver's offense at times, certainly did last night. And they still have MPJ there as well. And the Clippers aren't a very good matchup. So I'm not like as excited to play Jamal as I was last night I pivot off of what I thought was going to be a chalky Lowry, and I did get a lesser owned Jamal, and it just didn't work out. Anyways, there are so many options, like you said. Brunson looks good. Hallie looks good. I think of these other second tier options, I think Brunson would be the first one to stand out if Cat is out. And then I'd kind of be circling back to, if I'm going to go get a second guy to pair with Maxey and not look at Giannis or Wemby, I think what is shaping up to be an unowned Cade is what I would probably do. That's probably my favorite strategy if I'm going to double up at point guard. Because as things stand, Cade does have some ownership, but you better believe that Cade ownership is going to plummet the second Jokic and or Cat get ruled out. Would you agree with that?
Probably. I mean, it's a position with so many good plays that not everyone's going to get ownership. He's pushing K now, but I don't know. People will see the game logs. The matchup against Brooklyn is not a bad one for them, even on the road. I can see Cade getting some ownership, but like Maxey's going to be the highest owned point guard among the high end guys by a lot, I would think. So, I mean, I don't really care about ownership in NBA to begin with, so not concerned.
Yeah. All right. If we want to save, there are other options in the lower mid range too. There is Russ, obviously, as a direct leverage on Jamal. If Jamal ends up being chalky, he's 6.7K. He's in play. Honestly, you could still pair them together if Jokic is out. There's also Anthony Simons at 6.5K. He projects pretty well in a really nice spot against the Pels. So depending on how your lineup structure, shapes out, those guys are in play. Manuel quickly at 6.8K. He's okay anyways, but if one of those other Raptors guys ends up missing or something, he would elevate quite a bit. Are there any like point guard punts that you feel really good about? I mean, I think the punt would be Stephon Castle right now with no Jeremy Sohan at 3.4K, right?
Yeah, certainly. We saw this last week. Didn't really come through, but he's so cheap. He's 3,400. He's going to start. We think he started last time. Sohan missed. The matchup against Milwaukee is pretty good for guards like him, so I think that's a really good salary saver. If Halliburton's out, obviously TJ McConnell becomes like an awesome play at sub 4K, just an elite per minute guy. Even if he doesn't start, like I'm TJ McConnell. And then I think you can get into Jared Butler again. He's 3K flat. Saw some burn off the bench last night with Poole. The Wizards have a handful of questionable guys again. He got there last night in a tough spot. The blowout would help him if they get blown out. So I think Butler has a few avenues to get there, and he's only 3K, and he's a good per minute guy. Another one to throw out is Kason Wallace, but if he's owned, I'm not super interested. That's just kind of the kind of guy I'm not really super psyched about playing. If he's going to be owned, just not a great per minute guy, kind of a secondary spot up shooter for the Thunder, not an elite matchup against Cleveland either. So he's playable, but not a priority.
Yeah, somebody in the chat in Discord just said, if DeJounte ends up missing, and you said before we got on here that he's been questionable like every day, so you're not really that concerned. But if he ends up missing, Jose Alvarado could come into play. Isn't he a little bit expensive though? I don't remember what his price is. Oh, he's here. 4K now. So he would. I would imagine he would get a nice spike. So that is a good call. 4K Alvarado would be interesting. I think in that price range, you're looking down at him and Castle. I think TJ McConnell would, like you said, would probably be the play if Hallie ends up missing. But all those guys would be viable. Honestly, the Wizards overall, though, because you're kind of to your Butler comment, I think that's a good call. He's 3K again. He was a good try yesterday. I didn't feel amazing about him because he wasn't starting or anything. But Kuzma now injured. Sarr on the injury report. Poole could still be out again. So
Poole
lots of extra. Okay, he's already out. So lots of extra minutes for Washington. So all these other Wizards values, obviously J-Val would look we'll get to him in a second. But you know what I'm saying? So if you're going for Maxey and some other Philly value, which I think you probably should, then we can certainly run it back a little bit with some of these Wizards guys because there's going to be a lot of minutes available. I think that about does it. Obviously, just keep an eye on the injury report. Just a quick look to see who else at point guard is, needs to be monitored. Nobody else really.
Is okay. That's sub 6K. No Jeremy Grant, maybe no Adia. Matchup against Pelicans is a really good one. I don't think he's a bad play either.
How do you feel about Reese Beekman? The Nets are really shorthanded. He did get 18 minutes in the last two games. I don't really want to do that, but 3K flat. I mean, if you're living in the Jared Butler zone, I mean, why not Reese Beekman too? They have like nobody.
Reese Beekman is not a good per minute guy, and Jared Butler is. That's a pretty
Well,
easy
Ben
call.
Simmons is also doubtful. He's probably not going to play. So just saying. Keon Johnson's point guard eligible for the Nets. I don't hate him. His price has come up a little bit at 5.8K. Yeah, he's okay. I think if he's not going to be owned, I think he's an interesting tournament play because he did exhibit considerable upside a couple of games ago when he almost had a triple double. All right, probably does it for point guard. For the most part, this position's so loaded that it's going to be a spot where I pay, but there could also be quite a bit of value to fall in love with. Obviously, if DeJounte is out, Zion's already out. No Trey Murphy, no Brandon Ingram. CJ McCollum is popping like crazy. The best projecting shooting guard in our projections. Not even projecting for that much ownership yet. At 8K, given the scenario against the Blazers, revenge too. Like he looks awesome. Like it's going to be really tough to ignore him. Levine projects like right there with him at a similar price. In a really good game environment against the Pacers. I have no problem with that either. Maybe just play the ownership game between the two. Probably
Nobody's
just going.
him.
Huh?
It doesn't seem like anyone's playing Levine, but he looks like a really good option.
Yeah, he looks totally fine. And nice. That's a nice, clear pivot away from McCollum, who probably will end up getting ownership, especially if DeJounte is eventually is ruled out. But honestly, it's a little bit tough to prioritize those guys right away. I think we can circle back to them, but honestly, Kelly Oubre looks like one of the better values of the slate. There's just so much usage to go around for Philly, and obviously the Wizards are a dream spot. He's going to be chalky, very chalky, just like Maxey, but it seems like pretty good chalk to eat. It seems like unlikely that he would completely fail here. I mean, famous last words, right? But I don't see anything bad about the situation. The only reason to not play Oubre would be because of the ownership.
Yeah, there are a few pivots. Like I think he's a really good play, and I will play him. I don't love that he's shooting guard only for some reason, but it is what it is. There are some pivots, though. I think Tyrese Martin is okay, given all the injuries for Brooklyn. Should see some minutes. Shaden Sharp, we mentioned. Ben Mathurin, again, still under 6K. Pretty good matchup against Chicago, like one of the better matchups you can have. Don't think he's going to be that owned, especially compared to Oubre. So if you're
unless
looking
Hallie's
for a way to
out, I
make your
guess.
lineup, I mean, yeah, if Halliburton's out, he's going to get some steam. But if Halliburton's in, I don't think he's going to get super popular. I think that's fine. I think Tumani Kamara is okay also.
Yeah, boy.
Zaire Williams, just based on the minutes. Yeah, the play here is Brandon Boston, though. Like he's
3.4K, right?
Yeah, I feel better about him than I do about Steph Castle. Just like the guard forward stuff is useful. Matchup against Portland's good. If DeJounte's out, been more used for him. They need someone to get buckets without Zion and Ingram and Murphy. Brandon Boston does that. Been kind of underwhelming because they've been healthier lately, but earlier in the year when he got an opportunity, he was pretty good. Super cheap. I think he's probably the best play here overall.
Yeah. If you're looking at like Jared Butler, I think Boston's the better play for sure. If you're looking also like I like the Tyrese Martin call. It's okay. His price came up a little bit. Which his minutes projection was a little nicer, but he's okay. I would rather just go to Boston here. I think you can play them together, but you're stretching yourself a little bit thin with a lot of these guys. Bob Carrington, another Wizards guy we can look to, only 4.7K. We're getting really good minutes. Not really the most fun matchup, but the Sixers are so depleted that I don't even know if that matters. Andrew Nembhard honestly could get a ton of run if Hallie is out. He'd look good at 4.9K. Could be leverage play.
He would look really good. He might be a must play if
he would look good.
Like he generally thrives without Halliburton.
Yeah, I mean at that price you can play Nembhard anyways, honestly. But he would look really, really good if Halliburton is out. I don't mind Christian Brown and Tumani Kamara because those guys get a lot of minutes. Like anytime we're looking at guys under 5K, if they're going to play like 35 minutes, like I like that a lot. Brown's minutes lately have not been great, so I think I'd prefer Kamara here. But they both look viable. We could always chase the Tim Hardaway Jr. dream game. He had like 26 points and no other stats the other day. I don't ever like playing Tim Hardaway Jr. He's a very thin play. He has to score like 20 real points to hit. And that's just asking a lot. Julian Strawther at 3.1 is in play if Jokic is out. I mean, at 3.1, you could try him if you wanted to, no matter what, but I think he becomes a lot more interesting, obviously, if Jokic is out. I don't know. You see anything else here?
Devin Vassell without Sohan looks okay in the low sixes. Jordan Hawkins, if you're looking for a pivot, like he's not going to be owned. Brandon Boston's going to be popular if you want a straight line pivot just for the ownership. Minutes have been down, but they're thin on bodies. I think he should see a role tonight. I think you can fire him off. I was going to mention Strother, so that's a good call too. We didn't really touch on Levine, but without Io, the role for him is pretty secure.
He's been insane. Look at this shit.
Yeah, not the greatest matchup. Like Indiana's been a lot better defensively of late, but there's obviously a ceiling there, so I like that too.
Yeah, I do think though, like as long as we have spots where we can get different in a comfortable fashion, like I really do not like going into contests thinking like I have to get different, so I have to do something that I normally wouldn't do. Like I don't want to do that. I want to find like kind of almost like ownership gaps, right? Like I want to go find like 1 to 3 players that not everybody is on that I feel really good about. So if you get into a situation where, I guess if you're in that price range and nobody's on Levine, I would feel pretty good about that, like as a pivot from McCollum. But right now, I don't think that's what I would do here. I think I would probably eat the McCollum chalk. Well, I would imagine he's chalky. He's projecting incredibly well. But that's probably only if DeJounte's out. I don't really have a ton of interest in McCollum if DeJounte is in. I'd rather just eat the value with like Boston, as you said. All right, moving over to small forward. Zach Levine is the top projecting player there. Josh Hart right behind him. You have RJ Barrett, who's way too expensive for his projection. Same with Scotty Barnes. So Denny Avdia continues to live in our dreams. He's questionable, I think. Kind of hope he's out at this point because it makes Kamara look a lot better at 4.6K. But Denny's still in play at 6.9K. His role's been good. He's been good. Honestly, the last game, apparently he got hurt and also he had foul trouble. So he did bust, and he's not a core play at this price, but I think he's still in play. You said Devin Vassell. I like that call. Projection is not amazing, but at 6.3K with no Sohan, I think perhaps he can top that projection pretty easily. Norm Powell is a no as long as Kawhi is in there. Not really feeling that. MPJ, if no Jokic, he is definitely in play at 6.3K. But yeah, I don't really know if I have to pay up here. I think Levine is probably the pay up option if we're going to, but small forward is probably somewhere where I'm going to try to save some cash. You have Herbert Jones at 5.3K. Caleb Martin's probably going to carry some ownership at 4.9. We talked about Boston already. You got the Spurs guys. So I think this is a spot where I'm going to save cash probably.
Yeah, Caleb Martin into ownership is not a very appealing thing. Like I know it's the Wizards. He's probably going to play 30-something minutes, but kind of frightening. Still a good play overall, but that's someone I don't mind getting away from. I do think Keldon Johnson is just a better play at 4,200. Good per minute guy, more of a role without Sohan. Cheaper than Caleb Martin. The matchup against Milwaukee is pretty good, I think, overall. So Keldon might be my favorite non-Boston salary saver at small forward. Tyrese Martin, we mentioned again. Harrison Barnes as a pure like punt at 3.8 is okay, just because he has a role. Keyshawn George, our boy Keyshawn George, if the Wizards are without several players, can crack a player pool. He had a role last night.
He actually wasn't bad last night.
Yeah, he's okay. Like he's just super cheap. Like there's a lot of super cheap stuff here, so definitely not a position I'm looking to prioritize in terms of paying up.
Yeah, his floor is so gross. He's had one game over
another
20.
Air ball. Like I haven't watched a lot of Keyshawn George, but I've seen him shoot multiple air balls this season. Yeah,
that's the other thing. Just a piece of advice. I would try to play good players when you can. Sometimes like the salary just demands it. Like if a guy's gonna play 35 minutes at like 3K, fine. Just he'll be out there and probably accumulating stats, as long as he's not, going full Tony Snell. But yeah, Keyshawn George is in play because he's cheap. He's 3.4K in a spot where we would not mind runbacks from Philly. It should have an expanded role. Lou Dort at 4K deserves a shout out. He's going to play a ton of minutes guarding the Cavs wings. So he'll be out there. Another guy who could just accumulate stats by existing at 4K flat. Obviously not a high ceiling. He kind of needs to hit offensively to deliver. Not a guarantee at all. But he'll be out there for like 35 plus minutes. So I don't think he's the worst value play at all. I think he's definitely worth mentioning. I think Taurean Prince just took the starting job fully from Chris Middleton. Middleton's probably out too, right?
I don't think he is.
Well, either way, 3.8K Taurean Prince, just worth mentioning now that he's firmly, taking over that starting job. Maybe he'll get more secure minutes. Don't think I'm going to play him on this slate, but just worth mentioning. All right, over at power forward, we have Giannis leading the way with the 52 fantasy point projection. Honestly, not the best projection for Giannis. The Spurs are not the soft matchup that we want them to be, I think. I think they're a lot better than they were the last couple of years. Certainly, he's matchup proof and he can get it done anyways, but just doesn't really project as a priority for me. Obviously, overlooked and unowned Giannis is certainly interesting. Just don't know if we have to go all the way up on this slate. That said, he is the best projected power forward, and he's not a bad play. I'll never tell you not to play Giannis. Jalen Williams at 8.3K looks like a pretty good option, 3K below Giannis. He forever looks like a good play. He's too cheap. The match with the Cavs is not ideal, so I don't think I'm going to do that personally. Hart is fine. Like Raptors good, projection good, price. I don't know about that. I think if I'm doing anything here, paying up wise, I'd probably look at some like discounted guys like Denny, Siakam, OG Anunoby. I think
that's the best power forward on the slate.
Yeah, Siakam at 6.9K against the Bulls. That looks pretty inviting, especially if Hallie is out. If Hallie is out, that might be a core play, to be honest. Even at 6.9K.
Also questionable.
Yeah, it's even better, right? So he looks really good. Certainly, I would prefer him over Denny. He projects better, has a better matchup, although they both have really good matchups. OG is really tough to trust, but major minutes and the Raptors plus a lower price tag, I don't hate it.
Revenge.
Yeah, Tobias's price has come up. He's in play just because he's going to play a ton of minutes and it's the Nets, but I don't think we have to do that. Kuzma, if he's in, I guess, it's fine. He was good last night before he got hurt. Yabusele looks pretty good, though. 5K flat. I think he's one of my favorite values for now. No Embiid, possibly no Drummond, so he probably will get all the minutes he can handle. So I'll leave it there for you to chime in to see if you agree with any of those calls and what are the guys you like.
Yeah, I mean, I love Siakam. I think it's an awesome play regardless of the injuries, but he only gets better with more news. He'll also get chalkier if those guys are out, but I don't really care. I think he's a pretty awesome play. Yabusele, of course, I'll feel better about him if Drummond is also out, but either way, he's going to have a role. He's 5K flat. They're playing the Wizards, so easy to play him, easy to like him. We can start getting into Denver stuff. Like Michael Porter Jr., I don't think gets better if Jokic is out. I think Jokic being in might make him a little bit better since he kind of relies on Jokic generating him open looks. He's not really a guy who's going to take the ball off the dribble and do a lot of creating on his own. So I think it's a good play either way. Peyton Watson at 3-4 without Aaron Gordon is fine. Feel a little bit better about it if Jokic is out, but just another of those super punts that's in a player pool by default. Jalen Williams, I like that call a little bit. Still kind of expensive, but he's been good without Chet Holmgren in there.
Oh, I don't think I'm going there. I don't think I'm paying for him. I just wanted to mention him because he is a good price for his projection. 8.3K for Jalen Williams. It's, certainly palatable. It's definitely in play.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a good play for sure. Like, no one's going to play him. Definitely someone to keep in a pool.
Hey, by the way, love the call about MPJ, not just because he's kind of a good play anyways, because he's a nice price too, but because of the fact that this kind of goes back to your call about Derek Lively. We're talking about, he's such a good value. And you're like, well, he also benefits greatly from elite exterior passing coming into the post, getting easy, buckets that way. No Luka, no Kyrie. Who the hell is going to give him those lobs? Like, effectively, This is kind of the same thing here. Anytime we get into a situation where a really, really good passer like Jokic is out of the game, but this goes back to my Christian Brown call too. A lot less interest in Christian Brown, actually, surprisingly, if Jokic is out. Because then who's setting these guys up? Then they have to take on roles that they just are not built for. If you're a spot-up shooter, you might get more shots, but then you're also going to be tasked with creating offense, and it's not really something you do. So very good point. Something we definitely need to consider as we're kind of like bumping up and highlighting guys like, if this guy's out, this guy's definitely going to smash. Not always the case. Not always the case, and there's a reason for that. All right, let's see. Power forward all the way down here. Sarr is questionable, so keep an eye on that. Obviously, minutes are limited, so not really super interested in playing him anyways. You talked about Keldon Johnson. Peyton Watson, probably working off the bench. even if Jokic is out again. That was the case last night, but he's played 34 minutes in back-to-back games, and he's only 3.4K. So I think he's definitely a decent value we can look at. Obi Toppin and or Tracy Walker are going to be interesting values in the event that Miles Turner is out. So keep an eye on his status as well. What do you feel about any of these nets? Like, you got Noah Clowney at 4.4K. I mean, any interest in that?
I think Martin is the net most on Tyrese Martin is the one most on my radar. They have a super low total. I don't love it. I know they have a lot of bodies missing, but there's other value that I feel better about. The Nets might not score, 95 points tonight.
All right, moving over to center. Jokic, if he's in, smashes everybody to bits with a 65-point fantasy projection. Obviously, he would have a matchup with the Clippers and Zubac. I mean, I don't really like the fact that he is not 100% and that he's taking on Zubac, which is not really preferred.
Projection can account for him being ill, so
right.
Proceed with caution if he plays.
Obviously, if Jokic is going to be low owned, sub 10% ownership, we should have a little bit of consideration here, a little bit of interest. And if you're doing a lot of lineups, get a little bit of exposure to Jokic if he's in, for sure. Same thing if you're doing more balanced builds, which is probably where I'm headed on this slate. I still think if you're doing a lot of lineups, you should have a little bit of Jokic, Giannis, Wemby, just because they have 90-point upside. Okay. But as things stand, Jokic is almost 13K. He's sick and he's not in the most ideal matchup. I think this is a fade for me. But he projects better than anybody. So there's that. Wemby, Towns, Giannis are all also viable at center. The fact that all these guys exist on this slate and all project for over 50 fantasy points makes me feel bad for not playing at least one of them, because it's pretty likely that one of them is going to nuke. But Wemby and Giannis might cancel each other out to a certain degree because it's not really the most advantageous spot. And then also Cat might not even play. If Cat plays, though, at 10K, I think he is the pay up at center against the Raptors. Everybody here is fine. You can go play whoever you want of those guys. But I think if I'm paying up over 10K at center, it's going to be Cat tonight.
Yeah, I agree. I think the matchup is about as good as it gets for a center. I'm a little concerned since he's missed at least the last one game with the injury, but it's Tibbs. I don't think he'll be really limited if he's in. High total for the Knicks. I think that's an awesome play if he's in.
Yeah, hey, this actually goes back to what you told me about after Brunson was just tanking. Like, first of all, when we talked about it, I was like, dude, should I play Brunson? And you're like, it's a good play with no Cat. I was like, yeah, you're right. And then I was like, he is playing the Magic. So, and then in the middle of the game, you're like, well, I guess there was that questionable tag. Like, he was probably playing injured.
Brunson was also injured. So
yeah, so certainly you don't want to like rule guys out just because they have an injury tag, but also something to consider during your process. Jokic is freaking sick, so that's not worth. That's worth mentioning. Let's not ignore that. And then Cat, it missed a game, and he's not like fully 100%. That could be a problem. That said, I think I don't currently really want to pay up for anybody at center because I like all the guard plays, but Cat is the guy there. What are you thinking about the mid range? We got Hartenstein projecting really well here.
Yeah, I love Hartenstein. I think the value's there with him. 7,100 high floor play more than a high ceiling one this season.
Splendid.
Splendid play.
Splendid play.
Cleveland obviously plays big. They have 2 7-footers in the starting unit. OKC needs size. They can't rebound really except for him. So minutes should be secure as long as he can stay out of foul trouble. I think he's a fantastic play at 7,100. Pirtle's okay. He might be overprojected. I think his usage just naturally a bit inflated on the season since they've had so many injuries to Barnes and Barrett and Quickly. And I think with all 3 in, he's really not that great. So I might bring him down a little bit. Yabusele, we talked about. I think Ayton is an awesome play at 6'2" against the Pelicans. The Pelicans have been a team we've been streaming centers against all year. Obviously, there's risk with Ayton. Like some nights he just doesn't have it, and he gets benched. So proceed with caution, but I think he's a pretty good play at the price at 6'2". Yves Missi is someone also on my radar. Last night he sucked. I think that's correlated to Zion playing. Like with Zion and Missi on the floor together, there's really nothing for Missi to do. Like he just kind of stands in the corner. Zion obviously needs to be around the basket. With Zion out tonight, I think Missi goes back to being the guy he was before. Sub 6K matchup against Portland is a pretty good one. I think he's a really good tournament play. And then you can start getting into punt territory with Toppin and Stewart and Klingon, but it looks like a mid-range or a pay-up spot beyond like Yabusele.
Yeah, there's not like any clear center punts, honestly. So I'm probably looking at Cat or Wemby if I did pay up, but Ayton really is appealing. Honestly, it's more about the matchup because the projection obviously doesn't blow us away. It's matchup and salary. Ayton's very easy to get to. The matchup is very good. He's not blown up against the Pels, but he's averaged 36 fantasy points per game across 3 meetings, so it's not like he's been bad. So I can't imagine he's going to be terrible in this spot. I like the Misi call more about not necessarily that I love Misi here. 5.9 is a good price for him, and the Blazers are not imposing at all, but more about context. Like, definitely always consider, what the situation is. Yeah, obviously, if Zion comes back, Misi is not going to be down there getting production. It's going to be Zion taking over, right? So we need to be very aware of the personnel that these teams are rolling with. So another good instance of that would be if Sar is out, JVL's probably getting in there and starting lineup with the Wizards.
Bagley's out also. Like, they're pretty much out of bigs. JVL's going
to get like a ton of burn here possibly tonight. So at 5.3, and this is why I was saying I don't feel like I have to pay up at center. So there is Ayton. That's like maybe where I feel comfortable with, but JVL with no Sar, that's what I want to do tonight if that presents itself. Of course, there is the Indiana punts. Who's officially here for Indiana if Miles Turner is out? Is Walker center?
Toppin.
So Toppin, okay.
Harris Walker. They have Thomas Bryant who might get some burn.
Oh God. Okay, well, I keep an eye on that.
I don't think it's the worst thing you can do. He's pretty good per mid also.
Yeah, I would probably just trust like whoever they start there. If Miles is out, they're in play, right? They're fine. If Drummond plays and starts, then him against the Wizards wouldn't be the worst try at like 5.1K. I wouldn't hate it. But I think if JVL is in and starting, that is the center cheapie that I like the most on this slate. All right, let's wrap things.
Oh, go ahead. I assume they're going to do that stupid shit and start Jericho Sims over Precious again.
That was bullshit. That was bullshit.
Sims goes from being basically a non-factor to being the starting center who plays a ton of minutes, and Precious is just iced and still on the bench. So you can play Sims if he starts. I still think you can play Precious even if he doesn't start, but there's a lot of risk.
Yeah, very unclear as to what the right call there is, to be honest. Like, because in theory, Precious is the better player.
Way. Like, whoever you play is going to suck. So maybe you want to stick there altogether.
Yeah, it might be just a situation to avoid. I mean, I am with you. Precious is the better play, but obviously, based off of last time out, Sims is viable. Like, you can do it. I just don't want to do that. All right, let's wrap things up with our flag plant of the night and also our general strategy. Who is the number one guy you're building around? Maybe let's get away from Maxey because obviously we both like Maxey and the Sixers. Is there anybody else that you feel really, really good about building around tonight?
Probably Townsby's in. I really like Hartenstein though, for the reasons I mentioned previously. Just a very strong mid-range play. I do think a balanced build is pretty viable. Like if your top spend is Maxey, that's fine on this slate. Even if like there was a lot of cheap value with Castle and Boston and stuff like that, so there is enough cheap stuff to get to Wemby or Giannis or Towns or whoever, but the balanced build, depending on how the news breaks with Indiana, New Orleans, and Washington and stuff, as of now looks pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, we could eat our words here, but I don't really feel like it depends what happens. Like if Cat is out, Brunson looks so good that it's going to be tough to not play him and Maxey together. I guess he'd probably be chalky, but then you could also turn to Cade. The point is there's so many good guards with 50 to 60 point upside here that I don't think you have to force Jokic, Wemby, Giannis. I think if I'm going to pay up on this slate, the most I'm paying up is going to be Cat if he's in. If Cat is out, I'm probably playing Brunson with Maxey. And if Cat is in, I'll ignore Brunson, maybe play Cat, and then if I don't play Cat, I'll pivot over to Cade. Cade, honestly, if things break the way that they're currently going, Cade could go very overlooked on this slate, and that would be a mistake in my opinion. That said, like I said before, if you're going to roll a lot of lineups, get a sprinkling of these uber studs that could go off. Obviously, Wemby versus Giannis in the last game of the night. Old me would be like, I have to pair Giannis and Wemby, you know? I'm trying to get away from that and just think more like, what are the best plays? What's the best lineup we can build here? And of course, try to get a little bit different in the process. All right. Hopefully this helps you out a little bit. Certainly helps us out every time we do it. The slate clears out a little bit every time we walk through it. Hopefully it points you to some good plays, helps you think about ownership and all that stuff. If it does, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, check us out in Discord to join in to the community with the conversation. And also, if you're feeling a little bit of giving, hit the super thanks right below this video and throw us a few shekels so we can get a coffee, right? All right. Thanks for watching and good luck.